Hey, we have a packed audience today, joined by my good friend, Marc Benzakein. Marc, welcome back to the WP Minute.
Thanks for having me and thanks for doing this, Matt.
We're going to do a watch party. I think that's what we're calling it. It's not something I've ever done before. It's not something you've ever done before. I think they're popular on like Netflix. You can do it with Netflix and Facebook. I don't know.
Yeah,
But you did a talk.
I actually had imagined in my head like 10 minutes before this started that I'm probably going to be MST3King my own presentation, and I should have set the camera up with myself silhouetted and just like, with some popcorn and throwing stuff at the screen. But yeah.
It's going to be a blast. You did this talk in WordCamp or at WordCamp Canada. The problems with WordPress. It's not a rant, and we're going to watch that. And as your future self. So I might have questions as we go throughout the presentation. Folks in the audience might have questions throughout the presentation. We're in a hype cycle of issues with WordPress, and I want to just quickly pontificate on that with you while I have you before we go into your presentation, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. And you might be pausing just to clarify some things from your past self as your future self. But we're in this hype cycle of, man, a lot of folks being a lot more vocal recently, myself included, and you as well, that we're going through some growing pains. 20 years into this thing, not quite legal to drink yet in the WordPress world, but we're going through some growing pains. And I think this is the evolution of a lot of things. I think we're at the crossroads of a lot of things. Technology advancing at all fronts. Hey, other cool competitors to WordPress, social media, ways to publish, ways to build websites, ways to run a business. Things are getting a lot better for those tech users out there. WordPress is, it's old, it's ancient in the years of technology. So yeah, what else is out there? We have a whole new crowd of people who are finally finding their vocal cords and their legs in the WordPress community these days. They've been around for a while, but maybe they've just jumped in as well, and they're like, hey, I've been using this thing. What about us? And that's thanks to largely a lot of page builders and other means to build websites of these people coming into the community going, whoa, what's up? We want this to be better, faster, more performant, more competitive. Lots of lots of things bringing us to this crossroads lately of what's up with WordPress? Why isn't it better? And we're gonna see and hear some of that stuff in your presentation. Do you have any particular thoughts on like what's getting us to this very vocal moment across the community these days?
I think I'm looking at this and I'm looking about our at our like current political cycle or any political cycle, and it always seems like the people who are the loudest a lot of times are the new people who come into an established situation. And so when you look at, for instance, political cycles, you see like younger people are the ones who are protesting the most. And what I think happened, and I keep going back to this in many of the conversations that I've had, which is that with COVID, we had that period where there's like a disconnect between the people who have been here and then the new people coming in. And the new people are coming in and they don't know that there's necessarily an etiquette or things we don't talk about, or they don't even necessarily know that there are communities and that there's a structure and how leadership is set up and all of that. They just know that people say WordPress 43%. I mean, that's our ongoing thing, right? And I think that what's happening is because they quote unquote don't know better, which I actually think they do know better, but and that's why they are being vocal. That's why we're getting this sudden like onslaught of like new ideas and people who are vocal, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's awesome. I think it's like this new energy in a way that hasn't been harnessed right or directed right yet, but it's finding its way. And part of it is you got to start by defining what the problems are. You can't like work on any solution until you know what the problems are. And I think that prior to this kind of disconnect that's happened between all of us going quiet for a couple of years because of COVID and no community events, and people coming in. I think that this is like the result of that. And it's starting to get exciting again for me. Like, you know, I've been in this, like you have, forever and a day. It seems like a lifetime ago that I didn't even know what WordPress was. And seeing this new energy that's just coming in, and seeing people talk about where their frustrations are, this is getting me energized to be like, yeah, and thank goodness you guys have this voice that we've just kind of, I don't know if we brushed it under the rug, or if we just got tired of talking about it, or we just kept it to our own little inner circles or whatever. But I think that that's probably why we're seeing this, like this thing that's brewed to this point where things are starting to be talked about that were kind of like, you know, maybe Voldemort before. So, you know,
We're definitely the older ones in the room. I think the last time you and I were walking at an event, I think it was Pressnomics. We were walking to a bar that had an electronic bowl that people could ride. And I don't think either one of us could entertain that, staying up that late anymore. Although we'll see what WordCamp US brings, because it should be fun out in Portland this year. I'm going to queue up the video. This is a recording. Again, I'll just reiterate, recording from WordCamp Canada. Marc did this great presentation. We're going to pull it up on screen. It's watch party style. I think I'm going to put, let's go side by side and see how that looks. As we go through, think about questions that you want to ask Marc at the end of the live stream. Marc might be halting, or I might be halting and saying, hey, clarify this. What did you think about that? As we go through this video, a little bit of fun and excitement around this. Is nothing that we've ever done here at the WP Minute. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. We're going to listen to Marc from the past with Marc from the future, present. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Let's go ahead and hit play. Folks in the audience, make sure just thumbs up if you can hear the video well. If you need me to adjust something, let me know.
As mentioned in the intro, I am not 100% the author of this presentation. I put a call out to people via social media, via newsletter and various things, and got feedback from the WordPress community, so that I was not operating in a vacuum and saying, hey, this is what I think is wrong, because the reality is what I think doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. So, there's a lot to cover, and there's going to be some elephants in this very large room that we're going to discuss. And hopefully, if the other thing I want to say is, if any of you have any questions or comments or anything, I'm perfectly fine with being interrupted and asked. I like to cater my presentations to the audience, and sometimes the people I think I'm talking to are not necessarily the people in the room. So it helps if you interrupt me and ask questions. So I'm Marc Benzakein. I currently am marketing for Main WP. I have been an active member of the WordPress community for probably more than 13 years now, but I have organized a few WordCamps. And I've spoken at a few WordCamps and been a meetup speaker. This is my first presentation since prior to COVID. So yeah, I'm a dad of 8, and I'm also not a very talented slide designer. So hopefully you guys can, tolerate that. And I did it all in caps, but I did avoid using Comic Sans. So I'll save you all that, or Papyrus. Little disclaimer here, because this is going to be some sensitive stuff we're talking about. The purpose of this presentation is to encourage healthy discussion and seek solutions to challenges within WordPress. Any opinions stated are my own, those of the community members who have contacted me or posted publicly on social media. Any similarities to the opinions of the WordCamp Canada team, the WordPress organization, Main WP, or any company I am associated with are purely coincidental and should not reflect on them in any way. Are you guys squirming in your seats yet? So I've broken it down to about...
And I'm just going to, I'll pause. I'll be the first one to pause it right here. This is not easy, right? This is not easy to do this. And this is something I say I've made a career, 14 years of being a WordPress critic, criticizing, critiquing, feedback, loving, struggling, and all this stuff. So again, I'll applaud you right here. Like, this is not easy to stand up on stage to do this, and I think that's that buffer that you're putting out there is like, warning, this is just a culmination, and I'm standing here and I'm trying to relay this as best as possible. So good job on that.
I just want to respond to that really quick, if you don't mind. First of all, I've never been more nervous about doing a presentation in my life. Number one, and number two, I got to give kudos to a couple of people, and I'm going to do it now, which is, of course, the WordCamp Canada organizing team. I gave them about 3 options of topics that I want to discuss, and this was one of them, and it was honestly the one that I least wanted to do. And to their great credit, they were like, "Look, we want you to do this. We think that you're one of a handful of people within the community that can do this because you've been around a long time and you've seen the good and the bad and the underbelly and all that. And we'll support you 100%. We'll have your back." And so I got to give them credit. And then I also need to give credit beyond any other credit to Dennis at Main WP, who was like, "Look, I'm sponsoring you to go there, but you talk about whatever you feel you need to talk about." And so I felt the need for the disclaimer because, in all honesty, none of them really knew what I was going to cover in this, other than they saw the same calls on social media that I put out to them, and of course Dennis allowed for me to ask to do a call in the Main WP newsletter. So to their great credit, this is an example of we're in this together, and I really appreciate them having my back on this. So yeah, but no, it wasn't.
5 things that I have gotten, the feedback I've gotten from people within the community. There's certainly a lot more, but these seem to be the 5 common things that people have talked to me about when it comes to leadership, software, the community, image branding, and the competition. So we can keep, the idea is to get the conversation going, keep certain conversations going that are already going on within the community, and hopefully have something good come out of this. So I'm going to start with the elephant in the room, because no conversation about WordPress would be legitimate, in my opinion, unless we talk about this. Who owns WordPress? Now, I'm not going to get deeply involved in this. Some of you probably saw the conversations that have been happening around the net, specifically maybe, I don't know, WP Water Cooler or something, and Say is far more articulate than I am. So yeah, she's awesome. Accountability, project leadership, who's leading the project, decision-making clarity. I think we run into problems with who's making the decisions and why they are what they are, and the clarity, like what is the decision? And then the public image of leadership. Now, when I say public image, I'm not talking about outside of the WordPress community. I'm actually talking about what is the public image that we, within the WordPress community, have of leadership. And then the fear factor. People are afraid of ramifications. To be honest, I'm up here talking about this right now. I'm a little bit afraid, but I'm also at an age where I don't care. But so this is feedback I've gotten from people within the community. I have chosen to keep the emails and the personal contacts that you're going to see. I've kept them anonymous, although they have not all requested to be anonymous. However, I'm also going to be sharing some feedback from people within that I've just captured on Twitter and other places and shared here. And those are not necessarily going to be anonymous, simply because if they're already out there, they're already out there. So the problem with WordPress is that it would rather guess what people want than just ask them and listen. This particular person, I said, can you expound it a little bit more? And they responded with, In terms of expounding, I think this issue in particular has been a point of contention for years. WordPress relies on Matt as the visionary to guess where the open web is going and then execute that vision. Sometimes it's right, other times it's not. It's the nature of the beast that is FOSS. And FOSS stands for free and open source software, in case anyone is wondering what that means. That said, same person, there have also been various official and unofficial efforts over the years to give the WordPress community an opportunity to participate in the vision-making process. Unofficial failed efforts include the governance project Morton tried to push forward. How many people remember Morton? Okay. He tried a few years ago to push forward a governance project, which would kind of offer some oversight to the WordPress project. On the other end, official failed efforts would include things like WordPress ideas, which language for years.
I just want to pause it right here. So this is one of those things where I've even caught myself, and I talk to, my often co-host Marc Benzakein about this, who's younger in the younger generation, and also younger in the generation of WordPress. And there's a lot of stuff that we've all seen in the past that we've even forgotten we've gone through, right? And when you see, fresh voices come into the space and sort of rallying against, or maybe let's say protesting, like you used earlier, we forget that, man, we did that literally 10 years ago. It was Jetpack, and then it was Gutenberg, and then they were and those are just two major milestones, but there's all these little things in between, like Morton and Rachel's initiative with their project for transparency and governance in WordPress, and it's we were there, we were already experiencing this, and there are some fantastic parallels there. Did you want to hop in? Yeah, you're good. Okay.
On .org without resulting in any meaningful change. I read that and I'm like, I don't even know what WordPress Ideas is. Okay, so that was news to me. And I've been, with WordPress for a few years, but I'm obviously not going to know everything. So in collecting my thoughts, I suppose my expounded answer is that a major failing of the project has long been WordPress giving the illusion that the community can participate in the evolution of its vision without actually following through to allow it. How do you all feel? Do you agree, disagree? Okay. I just want to make sure I'm talking to the right crowd here. Oh, really? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A place to give feedback? Well, I think a lot of things happen in the Slack channels, and so if you're not a member of make.wordpress, then look into that. But there are venues and places where you can have these conversations. But since we're talking about leadership here, the question is, what happens with those conversations? And I think that one of the big issues that happens here is people in this room, people in the community have these fantastic ideas, but at some point, they end. The ideas end if they don't fall within a certain, and this is my speculation, but a certain vision or something that we may not be aware of. So the need is there, whether a solution is up to Matt to decide. You don't have to like it, but that's what there is. So that was one person's feedback. Going on, and I'll just keep going here. This was one that hit me. So this is purely my opinion. This was a tweet. Rob Cairns had posted on Twitter that now that WordCamp EU is over, hey Matt, why don't you come to WordCamp Canada, which was pretty awesome. And Matt's response was, how big is it? Happy to consider, especially if it's bigger than Europe, Asia, and US. Now the reason that bothered me is because that speaks to the disconnect between leadership and the community that leadership created several years ago. And I tried not to get deeply offended by it because it doesn't take much. I mean, it takes a lot to offend me, but that actually, like, it made me feel a bit stressed, because I felt like here was this WordCamp Canada, which I think everyone in this room agrees needed to happen. And thank you. That's me pandering to the audience. Thank you very much. And so this shows that disconnect that happens due to general evolution, I think, of any organization that grows. I don't necessarily fault Matt for I don't fault Matt for being disconnected. Matt has a lot to do. But it does show that there's this very practical disconnect that needs to be resolved within the WordPress community in order to move WordPress and keep it sustainable into the future. And then Ben Meredith, who is at GiveWP, he responded with exactly the same sentiment that I had, which is, is this a good faith question? Is the size of the camp really the issue? And I love what he said here. Please text 2014 Matt. That guy was excited about any WordPress or any WordPress event. And then Matt came back to his credit and says, I do wish that I could go. Okay, so, and he said, I want to meet as many WO folks as possible, but I think he meant WP folks as possible. So it's not capital O, damn it, it's capital P. But anyway, all right. You can edit that out in post, right? All right, good. This was an email that I received. This
can I interrupt?
Encapsulates the fear factor.
I just want to say this email. So this is one of the things that was brought up to me after the event, and you'll hear me talk about the person as a he. And someone said, "How do you know that it was a he that wrote this to you?" And I said, I don't. So I just want to say that I apologize for being insensitive and drawing my own conclusions on this. I really have no idea the gender of the person who wrote this to me. And so I just wanted to get that out while I'm thinking about it. And you may continue now.
Okay. This was an email that I received where the sender felt the need to email me anonymously. I have no idea who this person is. He emailed me anonymously and he said, Matt is the problem. Now, whether or not you agree with that is one thing, but the fact that the fear within our community exists is what bothers me, okay? Because he says, you're probably wondering why I'm emailing you and not sending you a DM on LinkedIn. It's because I want to keep who I am anonymous. That way, neither of us get retaliated against because we're talking about this. I would argue that one of us is not going to get retaliated against. But so this talks to the fear factor. We should not be afraid of leadership. Leadership is supposed to be there to remove roadblocks, to provide vision, to provide us a path forward, rather than having us scared in our pants of any ramifications that might occur, whether it's on social media or any other possible way. We shouldn't have to worry about that from leadership, okay? So I'm done talking about leadership for now.
And that's a very, very real thing for a lot of us to criticize WordPress and each other, really. We're all... WordPress, as you get into community, very difficult to even, criticize. We've seen criticism with like Automotive. I'm fairly good friends with Syed, I feel, and really good friends with a lot of people that work there. And it becomes one of those very difficult things that I don't know of anything else other than like local politics, where you have people in positions of power and decision making, and they're your literal neighbors, or they're at your kids' soccer games. And how do you have that that clear divide? And it's very challenging. And I agree. There's I don't have any space for or any tolerance for that fear. Like, I shouldn't, if I'm approaching the situation being critical of Matt, which I have been, and leadership, which I have been, I feel like I've done it in a respectful, professional manner, then I think that's totally fine, but I am with you on not wanting to tolerate that feeling of I can't criticize because I'm afraid of what will happen. It's an unfortunate thing. And I do. And also, just as an aside, like, I think Matt has been open to some criticism, not all. And he is human, and how much can one take of constantly getting attacked on so many angles or being questioned, things like that. So there's also that I consider when we're all coming at him at once. But certainly maybe him as a point to, like, am I going to go to WordCamp Canada if there's only 200 people there? Well, maybe there should be, the head of WordPress delegates that go out. I don't know, like, who are the lieutenants you can send out who will respond for you and also be there to, like, get the boots on the ground feeling. So that's just my point on that.
Let's talk about the community.
Say something. Yeah, I just I think that the fear factor is actually something that cannot be understated. It really was, obviously this was a short presentation. You'd be surprised at how many similar type sentiments were expressed to me about, I'm afraid that something's going to happen to, something's gonna happen to me and my family if I open my mouth in an open source community where community is the thing. So, but the thing is also, like you said, Matt is human. And I think what you just talked about is having empathy, and there's a difference between having empathy and being an apologist. And I have empathy for Matt because Matt does have a million things on his brain at any given time. And we only have so much room in the tank, right? So if all he's seeing is people complaining and people coming at him, and it's just a matter of time before the man's going to crack and he needs to take a sabbatical or whatever he wants to call it, and I think that what makes it worse, of course, is this social media is people are not afraid to tweet. And I'm going to go back to the whole say read thing, which, kind of started a lot of this conversation with a lot of us, was she was very respectful, I felt, in her kind of tweet storm that she did, I don't know if it was a year ago or whenever it was, but I thought she was very, very respectful. And that was an event that happened where, I think what ended up happening was, Matt eventually just had enough and he cracked. I don't think that rational Matt would have looked at that and said, oh, she's not bringing up points and she's being personal and she's attacking me. But the reality is, we still have that reptile brain kind of thing, survival instinct thing that kicks in at some point because we've run out of bandwidth. And so I think that it's really super, super, super important here that when we talk about the issues, we look at them as the issues and we deal with that, but we don't get personal, and we do have empathy for the person at the other end of this. And so despite the fact that previous section all kind of looked like a criticism of Matt, it's actually just a criticism of the way leadership is set up and things like that. And the issue at hand, it's not a criticism of him because he is just human. And we have to keep that in mind. So when we put things on social media and we complain and things like that, which is easier to complain than to compliment, we all know that. I think we need to be mindful of what we're putting in text and what we're putting out there. And I can go on to this subject for a long time, obviously, but I think that's what I need to say here. So that's, yeah.
So one of the things, and this has always been something that's sort of happened within the community, is we have like this segregation. We have the people who do and have been around for a while, and we have like these little cliques and this kind of like, hey, we're the ones who are doing everything and we're kind of like keeping you out of it. So there's like that kind of separation between the people who have been around for a while, for instance, and the people who might be new, and the people who might not know where to start, the people who might not know who to communicate with or how to communicate any grievances or any issues. There's that separation that happens within the community. And that, once again, a lot of these things are just natural things, but they are things we need to be aware of. I think that all of this is just part of evolution of any organization that grows. Anything I'm talking about today is part of organizational growth, okay? It's evolution. But we need to be aware of it if we want to preserve, protect, and progress where WordPress is and where WordPress is going. So, diversity, always going to be a problem. WordPress, I am happy to say, is better than most tech sectors, but we still have a long way to go with diversity. Lack of focus. It feels like a lot of times, even within the community, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Or you have a group over here that thinks this should be the main focus, and you have a group over here that thinks that this should be the main focus, and then it turns into this contentious thing, when in reality, we're all just kind of fighting for the WordPress we know and love. And I think that if we could come up with ways to focus better on our progress and where we want to go, we as a community could make WordPress better. Contributor burnout. Man, I gotta tell you, I have organized WordCamps. I have done so many things. I've done meetups. I've done so many things within the WordPress community. Contributor burnout is very real. It is tiring. We are volunteers. I am here voluntarily. Every single person that organized this camp tirelessly put this thing together so that you all could come and have an enjoyable time. And yeah, they deserve a huge amount of applause. I agree. But that comes at a cost. And that cost is burnout. Well, how do you counteract burnout? Well, there are things you can do. You can scale back. I have scaled back on my organizational duties within the WordPress community just because I don't have it in me anymore. And so how do we solve that problem? Well, one of the ways to solve it is to bring new people into the community. Show them the ropes. Teach them what it's about. Offload some of that huge amount of responsibility, and spread it out and distribute it. Because my experience, and I think most organizers' experience, is you have a core team of organizers, you have 50 more people who volunteer, and then real life kicks in and this and that and the other thing, and it's down to that core group of organizers who are doing it still. And so we have to be respectful of that, but we also have to keep in mind we need more people to actively get involved with the community at a level where they want to volunteer, and we need to value that contribution every bit as much as the core developers that are developing core, and every bit as much as the people who are writing the docs, and every bit as much as everybody else. We need to recognize that these people who are putting together these camps, finding the venues and all that stuff, getting the sponsorship, I can't tell you what all's involved. It's ridiculous, and they're just volunteers, It is I wouldn't say it's thankless, but I would say it is one of those things where if you were getting paid for it, you would say, I don't get paid enough to do this. Big money corporate interests. There's another thing. Now this was something that, once again, any organization that grows, there's going to be big money coming in. Unfortunately, what that does, and it's not that they shouldn't be there. The big money needs to be there, otherwise these events can't happen. But what happens is it does squeeze the smaller, quote-unquote, mom and pops, single agencies, all those things. It kind of pushes them out of the ability to do things like sponsor WordCamps and keep these things going. WordCamps do cost more, by the way, than they ever have. And so that's tough. So we need the big money, but with that also comes a cost. And that cost is when the big money comes in, they get to control more of what happens. We're very fortunate in this community, but we have to keep our eye out. In that the big money has been pretty good about saying, we just want the WordCamps to happen, okay? But If we don't pay attention to evolution and how things happen, and big companies are asking now more than ever, what is the ROI going to be on this WordCamp? And when that happens, then all of a sudden the money stops coming in. Well, if we don't have other ways to get the money, events like this just aren't going to happen. And honestly, I love these events. So, disconnect. This one is a my opinion thing. I feel, like I said, kind of like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing a lot of the times. And so there's that, it kind of goes into the lack of focus. And one of the things that I did not bring up is that some of these kind of overlap into the other 5 points or the other 4 points that I brought up. Lack of growth. This is something that we're seeing. We have growth in WordPress. Apparently the amount of sites running on WordPress now is up to 43%. And we're starting to see, the number go up again. But the community, I'm not sure, is getting bigger. We are not bringing new people in. And in order for WordPress to maintain, just because of things like contributor burnout and volunteer burnout and things like that, if we don't bring new people in, that growth is going to halt. It's not sustainable, especially this is open source, it's volunteer. And then there's the infighting. Now this is just me being a dad, okay? But it's like, can we please just stop fighting? I mean, if we disagree on something, we don't have to go on Twitter and we don't have to blast somebody. Let's be adults about things. If we have a disagreement, let's have a conversation. Let's try to come up with a compromise or something where we build upon what we've got here rather than calling names or assuming that somebody meant something, et cetera, et cetera. We all have our own battles that we're fighting. We don't know what that other person is fighting. Let's be respectful of that. This one, I've already talked a little about it. James Giroux brought this up on Twitter, and he's working on a new article called WordPress Has a Rookie Problem. I'd love to get some thoughts from the community on what they think our challenges are as it relates to more young people and first-timers into WP. He wrote a very good article, but this says it all. We're not equipped to help younger people solve their most pressing challenges so they aren't choosing WordPress. There are a lot of very easy solutions out there right now that are not WordPress. And if we are not actively, especially those of us who have been around for a while, if we are not actively pursuing taking people under our wing, helping them out, teaching them, and sharing with them the awesomeness that is WordPress, how many people in this room, just show of hands, how many people in this room, when they started WordPress, knew that a community existed? Okay, far less than half. Okay, when I started, I didn't know a community existed. Okay, so what's my point with that? My point is that people stick with WordPress because of the community. But if WordPress is not initially sexy to begin with, they're not going to discover that we have a community. So what do we do about that? And then Nye, who I've never met in person. I know she's here. I hope I get to meet her. What's that? Yeah, she's on the diversity panel tomorrow. I follow her on Twitter because I think she's awesome. And she wrote, I really tried and put a lot of work into getting newbies in, but now I feel like I failed them and myself. I wish I would have stayed with the Gov. Now I can tell you, I took a short period away from WordPress and I was with the Gov. That says a lot, okay? So the gatekeeping, the crazy-ass politics, the babying harmful people, the ridiculous learning curves, So those of us who have been around, we need to be motivated also to want to bring people in. We want to be proud of the community that we've built over the years. And this is a person she's on the diversity panel. She's very active in the community, but you can see the discouragement right there. I know we said this isn't a rant session, and I promise you, we're going to get And then someone emailed me and said, the core development and support model is very hard to scale and sustain. To advance WordPress, a constant effort is needed or necessary to recruit, retain, recognize, manage, and motivate contributors. There is not a strong, virtuous cycle where WordPress benefits from its own growth. Are we sensing a theme here? We need to bring in new people. Increasing corporate control. I touched on that a little bit. I said there's some overlap. The money has arrived, folks. Now that the big players have taken notice of WordPress and decided to step in, small and independent startups have little hope of influencing the project or competing on a large scale. Plus, corporations now have an outsized influence on the direction the open source project takes. There are some jerks who have too much power and influence, and it results in many valued members of the community being pushed out. I've seen this happen. Most of us have seen this happen. We need to be more careful about letting this kind of stuff happen. I will tell you, this particular subject, the software part of it, this is my weakest part. It's bloated, it's confusing, it's not sexy, it's one size fits all. It's run by volunteers. It's outdated. These are things that people have said.
I do want to just pause real quick. On the corporate side, where do you think that is? Do you think that's corporate hosting companies primarily? Something else, like a Google influence on the project, which at one point was in the crosshairs? I don't even remember what it was called. What was it? It was AMP. Was it AMP when they were introducing like the AMP project way back in the day? What is the corporate interest? Do you think?
Boy, I have to be careful how I answer this. So I can only speak to my personal experience, I think. And my personal experience was actually very early on when we were doing ServerPress and we were sponsoring WordCamps. There was a lot of blowback from the larger sponsors who were coming and saying things like, well, we're putting all this money into the WordCamp and we don't get any bigger of a table than this small company, that kind of thing. And you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I understand their point of view completely, but I also understand my point of view as a small business that I'm going to do whatever I possibly can to milk these things for all that I can, these sponsorships and everything, because I'm just trying to grow. I'm trying to provide a service to a community. And the way that I mentally dealt with it was I had to keep in mind that I'm trying to provide a service to the community, and I'm not going to let all this other stuff get in the way. And I think that what's just happened, and I say this in the presentation several times, of course, is the whole thing about the natural evolution of growth, which is the bigger players are going to have more influence. And when it comes to, say, for instance, WordCamps, which is a big part of what contributed to the community growth, when it comes to the sponsorships and things like that, when the larger companies start kind of flexing their muscle in a way, and I don't think that it's intentional, but it is also, they have to look at their bottom line. They've got stakeholders. They've got all these things that they have to pay attention to. So they're going to ask the question that on paper is logical and sensible, and so it's just a natural conclusion. You know, so it's not me. You know, the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I say here is that this is not me like demonizing anybody. It's just me saying this is the practical reality of how things go, and it is unfortunate because this is the result, and this is what happens.
Yeah, one of the things, and I'll just to button this up and we'll hit play. I think everyone should have like we used the word empathy before. It's something I use a lot as well when I talk to people about navigating the community waters. A lot of big web hosts also get a lot of flack from us, from Matt, from a lot of folks that are, but have some efforts in trying to do things in the WordPress space, where I'm sure there are much larger or not much larger, but other corporations and other big brands who leverage WordPress or WordPress benefits them somehow that do nothing. Like nothing, right? And we don't ever, I mean, you could look at like governments and other web hosting companies, Google. I mean, my God, thanks to WordPress, zillions of pages of content have been published, which has amplified Google search results, AI. I mean, you go down the stack, like WordPress has helped through publishing all these other companies. So anyway, just want to think empathy, corporate, commercial, all that stuff will continue.
And I have a little story to go on. It's viable. There are plenty of viable alternatives. I was in WordCamp Phoenix a year and a half ago. I was on an elevator with Matt Capalla, who runs Site District, which is a shared or a managed WordPress host. And we had our badges on, we're in the elevator, and this woman and her partner were on the elevator, and they looked at us and they said, "You guys work for WordPress?" And we're like, "Well, we don't work for WordPress," but it's kind of hard to explain exactly what your role is when people don't know what WordPress is to begin with. But what she said next was, "I hate WordPress." That was the next thing out of her mouth. "I hate WordPress." Why do you hate WordPress? "Well, it's very confusing. I spent an hour and a half trying to figure out how to set up a WordPress site. I couldn't do it." And then her partner is grabbing her by the arm. She was probably a little bit, she probably had 1 or 2 or 10, but her partner's grabbing her, trying to get her out of the elevator because he was a little bit embarrassed, I think. And the last thing she said is, "I ended up going to Wix." And then the doors closed. I mean, end scene, right? So, so we have that image problem, but we also have this problem of...
I once had a woman tell me at a WordPress meetup, "Thanks for inventing WordPress." she was confusing the mats.
Of WordPress, the 5-minute install, yeah, sure, you can get a 5-minute install. You can do it in less than 5 minutes. You can do it in 30 seconds. But then what? And we have so many docs out there that it's hard to know what you're supposed to do next. So I can see why people get confused. One of the things that I was chatting with a couple of people, and it hit me, it was just within the last 24 hours. People in this room like to teach. But if 43% of the net is WordPress, how many of that 43% really want to learn? Okay? Most of us are like, "Oh, let me show you that." I mean, my girlfriend is, and she will tell you, she's the least technical person on the planet. She's happy that she can use her iPhone. And so I'll go into an explanation every single time. "I need to do this." I'll say, "This is what you need to do, here's why." And she'll say, "I don't care." And the reality is, if you're thinking of 43% of the net, probably 35% of that 43, or 35% of the total. So I'm not going to do the math, but anyway. Bad enough I'm on the stage. Trying to do math is a whole nother thing. So, but a large percentage of that are not going to care. They want their site to work. Why is Wix working? Why is Squarespace working? Why did that woman, the last thing she said to me as she walked out the door is, "I went to Wix"? Because she doesn't care about all the reasons WordPress does it. She doesn't care about posts and pages. She doesn't care about custom post types. She doesn't care about any of that stuff. She just wants her site up. And until we realize that the people in this room are not our demographic, we're going to have that problem. The people in this room are teachers. They are not people. I mean, we all want to learn, don't get me wrong, but they're not us, right? The people who have these websites, they're not us. And this person emailed me and says, "It suffers from being so old and big. That doesn't mean the software the software itself sucks. Far from it. In fact, those factors have made the software exemplary. The issues with age and size have a lot to do with the content and overall difficulty learning and entering into WordPress. Since it has existed for so long and become so ubiquitous, I can't believe I said that word right the first time. Yeah, nailed it, yeah. The amount of educational content online is staggering. Since the software has advanced rapidly and its uses become so varied, new users will always struggle to wade through the mess of outdated, poor quality, and not right for my use case educational content. Software that serves very specific use cases and is also young, or at least hasn't changed dramatically, does not suffer from this problem. You have a product that's been out for, 30 years or 20 years or what? It was 30 years that we just celebrated, right? 20? I don't know. 20, 21, thank you. Anyway, you can't have a piece of software for that many years and not have a lot of documentation that is valid, but also a lot of documentation that's not, unless someone has maintained it carefully and curated it carefully throughout that 21 years. And part of the problem, as Shanta just said, is it's done by volunteers. And there's not I don't know that there's like a clear path to like handing it off and moving, progressing it. I think it's just like, oh, I'm going to write this doc and I'm going to join the docs team and boom, Bob's your uncle or whatever, right? 2 different teams, right. It's for everyone and everything. Telling someone to learn WordPress doesn't mean anything anymore because its uses are myriad. It's like telling someone to learn business or technology or education or medical or whatever. It's too broad. Years ago, we were all using WordPress for very similar purposes, but today, users share far less in common. Let's talk about image and branding. Once again, I'm talking about outside of the WordPress community because 43%, they're not all WordPressers. It's blogging software. We've heard this since I got into it because I thought it was blogging software. That was me. It's complicated. It's confusing. It's difficult. And this is what people outside of the WordPress world feel about WordPress. Why would they want to get involved with that when they can get into Shopify, they can get into Wix, they can get into all these other things, click a few buttons. Yes, lady in the front. That's true. That's a good one, and nobody emailed that to me, which is crazy, now that I think of it.
Do you know what she said there? I can't hear it.
Yeah.
I have no memory of actually doing this presentation. So
Mark blacked out on stage. All right, we'll continue.
I will say I'm really terrible. I always tell myself I'm going to repeat what the audience member says. I know that that's a proper thing to do when you're on stage, and like I said, I black out and I always forget to do that, and I need to work on that skill.
Did they have you mic'd up with a lapel mic?
That was a lapel mic, yes.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's good. I can't believe that didn't make the slide, and I can't believe nobody said anything. But thank you. Why didn't you email me when I asked? Sorry. Yeah, all right. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. What was said was that there is a general impression out there, the optics for WordPress is that it's not secure. So, and hackers can get in, being open source. A lot of people don't understand open source. So a lot of times people have an impression that things aren't secure just because they're open source. That's as far as it needs to go. But because WordPress is a large portion of the web, it's also going to be the #1 thing that gets attacked. That's just, the nature of the beast. Let's talk about competition. We already have a little bit. I'm talking about within and outside of WordPress. I hate to sound like that guy that's like, back in the old days when everything was hunky-dory, but back in the old days when everything was hunky-dory, WordPress the community had this attitude of there's plenty of business for all of us. A rising tide floats all boats, et cetera, et cetera. Over the last few years, as WordPress has saturated, I started to, and this is me talking, I'm not speaking for anybody else, so this is my observation. I've started to see a lot more of people going after the same customers, trying to figure out strategic ways to get customers from someone else within the WordPress space, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't used to be that way. Once again, this is a natural progression, but it's something we need to keep an eye on. And I don't know that I have a solution for that. But I think that, my personal solution is when a market gets saturated, you'll look somewhere else for a market that's not. So you come up with unique ways in order to generate revenue, because even going after other people's market is not necessarily sustainable. So trying to find new, fresh markets to service might be a better use of time. My theory, and we can go from there. Outside WordPress, we got Wix, Squarespace, etc. But not just them. Okay? We always ask the question, how do we compete with Wix? How do we compete with Squarespace? How do we compete with Shopify? Which are legitimate questions. But we also have the social media side of things. I can set up a Facebook business page. How many of you have clients who say, I got a Facebook business page and it's generating income. I just want a website. Okay? Facebook business pages, you spend a little bit of money, you spend a little bit of time, you have engagement in 10 minutes. And you don't have to know anything. Now, if I'm a small business owner, that's very appealing to me. And that's a competitor that I think we're starting to pay attention to, but we need to be paying more attention to that. Because in a way, that threatens websites as we know it anyway. And then AI, you can't have a conversation anymore without mentioning AI. I'm not going to go into AI, blah, 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 but I had to say AI because everybody has AI. So, anyway, the competition is really, really good. We are way, way past the days when WordPress was competing with other open source CMSs like Joomla and Drupal. Those were the good old days. Now WordPress is competing with Shopify, Squarespace, Facebook Pages, Amazon, and 1,000 others which have a clear identity and are fantastic at what they do. It's always hard being the generic solution for everyone. What's that? Yeah, there's page builders. Yeah, they come there. Yeah, it's crazy. And they work, and they're good. And in the early days of, I wouldn't say they're good, but they do a good job for the market they serve. But I remember when Wix came out, the big argument was, yeah, but you're not going to get good SEO. Well, they kind of fixed that problem. So you can't constantly, there are good arguments to not use Wix and Squarespace and things like that. But how do we put that in a message that people understand? That's the question. That's true. WordPress is not positioned and designed well for the more modern and innovative needs of websites and web apps today. WordPress can certainly do amazing things, almost everything, but cutting-edge online platforms and apps have requirements these days which WordPress doesn't deliver on. One can easily argue that WordPress is amazing, but mostly for the things that were hot 5 to 10 years ago. I'm not going to say I necessarily agree with this. It was sent to me. I think that as long as we have people developing for WordPress, we can continue to be cutting edge, but we also have to get rid of the bloat. We have to get rid of a lot of other things. And like I said, software, in this particular case, this is not my forte. So now we're going to get to the other part of the conversation, which is the solutions with WordPress. Let's start with leadership. What can leadership do? Here's the hard, cold reality. We cannot do anything about what leadership does. Leadership is going to do what leadership is going to do. They can and they will. We can encourage things. we can recommend things, we can be vocal, we can do all these things, but they don't have to do what we tell them. In my opinion, what leadership can do, sorry about that, is leadership can work harder to connect and reconnect with the community. There was a time when leadership was very connected with the community. I would like to see that happen again. I would like to see situations where the question of whether or not WordCamp Canada is going to be as big as WordCamp Europe, I'd like to see a situation where that doesn't come up again, because the person asking the question knows the answer to that already. I think that that leadership needs to invest more in WordCamps and events. I think that that's what grew the community in the first place. It worked. It's a form.
Hey, I just want to say here that one of the things that came up after the presentation was that I didn't focus a lot on the solutions. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that these solutions were me operating in a vacuum. I did not ask for solutions from the community. So these were just my ideas, number one. And number two, solutions always take longer than defining a problem. So that, you know, that's not just a WordCamp presentation. that is an ongoing effort. So I just wanted to put that little kind of disclaimer in there and mention that.
Formula that works. And I don't want to say, oh, it was good enough for us in the old days, it's good enough now. I think that one of the benefits and one of the strengths of WordCamps is that the magic of WordCamps is that it takes, and this is where I'm going to offend everyone in this room, so I apologize, but it takes a group of misfits, puts us in a room where we all get each other, okay? And that's the magic of WordCamps. And by not having WordCamps and not having in-person meetups and things like that, you know, we are not getting outside of our comfort zone as a result, and we're going back into our holes, which is where we are most comfortable, but maybe not the most productive when it comes to growing an open source community. So I think continuing to invest in WordCamps and supporting WordCamps is huge. I'd love to see them listen and then act on suggestions. Rather than having some sort of a blow-up reaction or something like that, actually listen. That's what leadership can do. Now, I'm not going to put it all on them, okay? We need to show empathy as a community, okay? I feel like so much goes on publicly that, am I running out of time? Am I going long? Okay, I'll talk faster. No, that's okay, that's okay. Thank you for pointing it out, because I could talk for hours. Anyway, we need to show empathy. When somebody comes on and says something where they put their foot in their mouth or something like that, we have to show that person grace. You know, we all have moments where we say something stupid. It's just these days, everybody knows when we say something stupid. I'm up here right now. I've probably said 10 stupid things since I've been up here. Show some empathy. We're all human beings. And I'm talking about empathy towards leadership. I'm talking about let's be a little bit more forgiving. Let's realize that Matt, for instance, is a man who is running a multi-billion-dollar corporation and trying to keep the organization going and doing a million other things, and he's given no leeway anytime he makes a misstep. And when he makes a misstep, everybody knows about it, everybody talks about it. I'm saying maybe we could be a little bit nicer about it. Open and maintain respectful dialogue. It's all along the same lines. Avoid reaction and focus on action. We tend to react, let's not. All right, let's go in the community. Let's make entry into the community less intimidating. Those of us who have been around for a while, find the new people who are at the WordCamp. Find the new people at meetups and say, hi, let me show you the ropes. Let me show you what we're about. Let me show you what makes us so special, because we love this community. Organize more meetups. And like I said, veterans can find people to mentor. Diversity, diversity, diversity. We just need more of it. Stop fighting. Like, seriously, just stop it. Like, what we can do with this, let's welcome new people into the software, people that are new developers that have new and interesting ideas with what we can do with WordPress. Be welcoming of them. If you're a core developer, take these new people and say, hey, this may be the way that we always did it, but this might work too. Let's talk about it. Let's encourage innovation. Let's create easy to find and useful documentation. I don't know if that means a new search engine. I don't know what that involves, but let's do something there. And then let's prioritize. Everybody thinks that what they need is a priority, right? But when you prioritize everything, you know, like the saying goes, when everything's important, nothing's important, right? Image branding. Let's bring back the marketing and actually give the marketing some power to actually brand a WordPress. Let's establish a clear mission. Let's simplify our message and our mission. And by the way, democratize WordPress or democratize publishing. What does that mean? It might mean something to us in the room. It doesn't mean anything to anyone outside of WordPress. And remember that most users are not interested in learning, which is a hard pill for me to swallow. My dad was a teacher. My dad is still a teacher. I'm a teacher. But remember, not everyone is interested in learning. They just want it done. Competition. Focus more on value and less on price. We talk about how WordPress is cheap. We talk about all these things. We don't talk about the value. Let's make WordPress easier. Let's not convolute or overcomplicate the message. Focus strictly on the needs of the demographic. And then don't discount the competition. In some cases, it actually is the better solution. Once in a while, you come across and you know what? You're perfect for this. Okay. We'll never get 100%. Lastly, I want to leave you with this. Hope. Okay? Why I'm up here is because of hope. Hope is not a solution, but you cannot have a solution without first having hope. So I'd like for us all, especially those of us who are a little bit like maybe burned out or tired or whatever, try to find that hope that we once had. And let's share that with others because it'll come back to us, it'll remotivate us, it'll re-energize us, and we can make this thing better. And that is it. Any questions, or is there time?
Well, there's certainly time for questions from our audience. I did cut the video there. Fantastic stuff, Mark. If all 60 people were in the room with us right now, there'd be a round of applause as well. This is great stuff. There's so many points, and anyone watching this obviously right now, if you have questions, throw them in the chat, and we'll ask. But we will try to wrap this up pretty quickly. It's been over an hour. The empathy side of things, could not agree more. For leadership and other community members, it is something that I try to practice and remember. Through some of the outbursts that I have, and remember that's like perfect advice when you said, don't go to the reaction, like go to the action that you can actually help move this thing along. A few things for those folks that don't know that are happening. Again, it's all through automatic, and we could criticize that approach or look at it critically if we want to, but the Media Core initiative, while it's in its infancy, still has the asterisk of experiment. Right? I haven't heard that change yet. It's still like in experiment mode, and this is sort of what kicked in after the Make Marketing team was frozen. Dismantled. I don't really know. The channel is still there. I still see people popping stuff in there every once in a while. But this Media Core team was put together, and it is led by Reyes from Automatic. I have to say that it has been pretty good so far, right? To have like an official channel to pull in the information us media folks in the WordPress space might be looking for. Hey, here's WordPress 6.6. Here's some of the behind the scenes stuff, how it all came together. I believe this month we'll have or going into September. Josepha is going to address the media core. I think that's a great initiative. Ann McCarthy wrangling the YouTubers of the world is a great initiative. And even though that might not be an official thing, more of like her own side quest, I hope that it becomes like a more official thing that that Automatic does. There's been some life brought back into the tavern. I mean, all roads lead to WordPress media for me, obviously, but I'm biased. But I think that media outlets, like so many people do, live streams, newsletters, blogs, podcasts, I think are very valuable to a lot of the messaging that you bring up. Is like, how can we make this all better? How can we onboard the right users? How can we talk to the people who should be coming into WordPress? You know, that at least is my energetic moment of WordPress. Like, as much negative stuff is like thrown around, I see things slowly trending into a direction where we can all get on board with better messaging for WordPress. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying, you know, it's a clear path to success, but it's something where I do feel like a lot of the stuff that was brought up in your presentation, yeah, that was like the general sense of things for the last 2 years. Like, people are just like, ugh, what is this? You know, why are we doing this? And myself, like personally, having to detach myself from that emotion and being like, I don't want to be so consumed by this that it affects, one, my life, you know, my health, and the work that I do with WordPress, right? Like, I don't want that emotion, that negative stuff to affect the, you know, the content, the educational content that I put out. Maybe the new stuff is good to have that emotion, but for the educational stuff, like, here's how you can use Gutenberg WordPress 2024. Like, here's why you should be using WordPress. I don't want that negative side to affect it. I saw somebody tweet earlier that a lot of this stuff isn't healthy to, you know, constantly beat up WordPress and its direction, because what does that say to the users? Right, of WordPress? Like, we're all talking to each other and we're in this bubble and we're like, oh God, it's got to get better, it's got to get fast, more efficient, and then all this criticism. But then the users are like, whoa, aren't you? I thought you were the cheerleader for WordPress. Like, why are you beating it up so much? Should I be using it? If you're not happy with it, why should I use it? And 100% like focusing back on that user, getting people on board, talking to the demographic that you're really good at, and I think that's another great thing as well. End it and take your thoughts on wrapping up, Mark. There's a lot of us with our own skill set and our own interests with WordPress, our own abilities, our own audiences, and that's fantastic. You know, if you're a hardcore PHP JavaScript developer, you lean into that, right? Don't beat up the page builder folks of the world. Just let them exist. Let them talk about their page builder of choice and how they build websites. And same thing, page builder versus page builder. Just it's your tool. Use it. Move on. I think we all can lean into the things that we're really good at with WordPress, and that does enhance at least the marketing and messaging, in my opinion. Just because I say I love WordPress as a publishing platform first and foremost, not a website building platform, doesn't mean I'm against website builders, right? And vice versa. Like, this is why I love it, and here's how I, you know, amplify that particular message. My 2 cents on that. But once again, just fantastic stuff, and I'm glad you made the presentation and then came into your future self here to listen to yourself. As Brian Cord said, he's like, I could never listen to myself, you know, watch my own presentation after. So that is a feat to itself right there. So again, thanks for doing this today. It was great.
Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me. I know that you and I kind of threw the idea around a month ago or whenever, and I think you came up with the idea, and I was like, you know, that would be really fun. And then, you know, as it got closer and closer, I was like, why do I think these things would be fun right off the bat? And then, like, but wait, this means I have to watch myself, like Brian said, and things like that. You know, you start thinking about the actual ramifications of the decision. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad that I'm here with you, and I do think that you know, the marketing is definitely a complex issue, and the messaging of what WordPress is, and we have to pay closer attention. And I actually was on the marketing team, like, when at that original when the idea, when we had it, I mean, when we started it, it was at the WordCamp US. I don't remember which one it was. And, you know, and I didn't stick with it very long because my immediate thought was there's no real vision on what the marketing team is supposed to do. And there's no real mission here. It's just your marketing. And I think that whenever you start with any idea, you have to say, okay, well, what's the mission here? And so it always kind of had, you know, kind of this lack of focus. Nobody knew who really led it. I mean, there was the head of the marketing team, but nobody knew what they were allowed to do and what they weren't allowed to do, or what was, you know, generally considered a good idea or a bad idea. And I think that the marketing team, you know, in my opinion, and this is once again just my opinion, the marketing team needs to come back, and what it needs to focus on is it needs to focus on what kind of optic do we want to present to the outside world of WordPress. You know, if we want to grow WordPress, once again, as I said in the presentation, I like to go from, you know, outside and bring new people in. I think that's where innovation happens. And so how do we do that? So we have to pay more attention to that. And I think that if the marketing team focused more on that rather than us all trying to market to each other, we're already in WordPress. You know, you don't need to convince me that it's good. You don't need to convince me that it's bad. I'm in it, right? I haven't left it. So why are you marketing to me? And I think that you know, if the marketing team just had that one singular focus of let's bring new people in, and let's focus on what our simple message is, to bring people in so that it's easy to understand, easy to digest. They don't have to put a lot of mental, you know, gymnastics into it. Then I think that we could continue to grow the community in amazing ways, and we could continue to grow WordPress in ways that had never been thought of, because we're bringing fresh eyes into it. So, and well, you know, and Jeff, you know, hey Jeff, how are you? I know you've been saying stuff throughout, but yeah, I know that you're saying that the focus has to align with what Matt wants, and I agree. And you know, yeah, all roads lead through Matt, and that is a leadership issue, of course. And it's not that it's Matt; it's just that that's the way the structure is, and we have to figure that out. But I think that if you make a really good use case, I do think that Matt will listen. It's just you have to make the case, and it's not just, hey, this would be a great idea, let's do this. And you know, it's going and saying, this is why we should do this, and this is how it would work, and this is what the long-term effects of it would be, and this is where we need to start. And I do think that Matt would listen. But you got to start somewhere. And I think if we just started with what is our outside messaging going to be in order to bring people into this community, because it does need to grow, because WordPress needs to grow, it needs to improve, then I think it's a healthier place to start. So that's my 2 cents. And I think that's about all that I have to say on all that. I don't
Yeah,
really, but you know.
Yeah, I have a prediction that you know, through 2025 we will see, I don't want to say less Matt, but I think what we'll see is the more decision making, more routing through the Matthiases, the Rich Tabers, the Ann McCarthys, and what should be also Josepha, sort of overseeing that crowd. I honestly don't know how, with so much on Matt's plate, he can continue to run a successful company. Not even just like this
Right.
WordPress thing, but
Right.
just all the things that Automatic has to do in order to survive. And I'm a broken record about this. I think they are the best steward for WordPress. I don't want it to be Salesforce. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
And at some point, there's a reckoning to get more serious with Automatic and WordPress, right? The Simple Note, the Pocket Casts, the Day One journaling app. I think that's what it is. Like all of this stuff. Yeah, that's what are we doing? Like it is a wonderful products. Love Simple Note, one of my favorite apps, but they are simply a distraction to the core mission of WordPress. And there needs to be a reckoning of Automatic surviving and them looking internally going, we've been doing this. We got to survive. And I don't know what that's going to be, but I think it's going to be at the first level is, I need other people in place to make these decisions for me to continue to look at Automatic from a broader perspective. Because listen, you look at the hundreds of millions of dollars going into, or $150 million going into acquiring messaging apps. I think, when you look at communication, publishing and stuff like that, this core mission that he is bringing Automatic on along with us with WordPress makes total sense, but you got to start tightening those things up because it can't just be acquiring it and hoping it's going to mean something. And I know he's getting that, and I know he knows it, and I know he's getting told that. So like, we got to do something with this thing, and the reckoning will be coming. So what we don't want is keep pressuring Matt, and then suddenly he turns around and he goes, "Okay, everybody, $5 a website," and then we're like, "Oh shit! Hey, you're doing great, Matt. Leave us alone."
Yeah, but see, that is a problem. In that he could do that
100%.
Right, and that's I mean, that is a problem. And yeah, I mean, right now we're dealing with I always use like really bad analogies, but it's kind of like the company, like the whole organization, everything has a little bit of ADHD, right? And we have like a million different things going on, and we need some of those people to be like the right Adderall for everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Mark, this was great. We have just one question that came in real quick. Where can we find the presentation? That video will also stream on WordPress.tv when the WordCamp TV team gets it up there.
Yeah. So to the credit of leadership, they left it to the organizers as to whether or not they felt like this presentation was "quote unquote" controversial enough to put up, and to the credit of the organizers, once again, they were like, "We think that this needs to be said and a lot more," and so it will be up on WordPress TV, from what I understand. So.
Rest assured, the WP Minute will always publish your controversial content.
You haven't seen my real controversial content. I take that back.
That's fantastic. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Solid hour here today, Mark. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode, everybody.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.